I'm going to work through the solutions, and then each time I finish, I'll show you where the marks are assigned. Now, this is a bit tricky for me, because I sort of have to wear two hats at the same time. Let me explain what I mean. I've already told you... Oh, yeah, question? Yeah, sure. I've already told you that there are some weird things about HSC marking that are kind of characteristic to HSC marking only. And we try to mimic it in certain ways, but we consciously try not to mimic it in other ways. Example. I've already told you about this one before. If I give you this question, okay, what would you say the answer was? X squared onto plus c. Okay, now, you remember that I said in an HSC exam which has plenty of integration questions, okay, there will be one place and one place only where they're actually going to deduct a mark for the constant not being there. Okay? So that means that by and large, if you see a question like this and you answer it like that, in the HSC, that more than likely will get through and there will be nothing deducted from that. Okay? Now, it's so trivial, to be honest, it would only be worth 1 mark. If it were in that section where they were deducting for the constant integration, and it didn't have it, you'd just get 0. Because you get 0 or 1. It's not correct enough to be able to warrant the whole mark. Okay, and because the actual integral itself is so simple and straightforward, you don't really get anything, like that's not a free mark or anything like that. Okay? So therefore, constantly I'm going to be talking about what gets accepted, right, versus what I'm going to encourage you guys to put marks on and not put marks on. Because can you imagine what would happen if you were the teacher and the way that you explained a question like this, right, to your students was, look, this will get through most of the time. So don't worry about the constant. It'll be right. She'll be right, you know, chuck a ship on the butt, whatever. That's a bad idea as a teacher because then you're setting up really, really awful habits. Even if it does get through, right? That's kind of not the point, yeah? So what I'm going to do is, particularly for questions later on where it seems quite simple, I'll try and explain both where they diverge, okay? Right, let's have a go at this first one, the integral. This is the question. Yeah? Okay? And we've kind of done these to death, haven't we? It's 3 marks, and it's an easy 3 marks. That's why it's in question 2, because they even supply the substitution. Okay? So, being that it's 3 marks, and the answer is very simple, you really need to look for the working and that it's all set up. If you just have this, okay? Does anyone know? Number one, this has a name. When you just see an answer on its own, it has a name. You don't know what it's called. It's generally called a bald answer. Answer with no hair. It's just the answer sitting on its own, no explanation, justification, working. The maximum that a bald answer will receive in the HSC, no matter how much the whole question is worth, is 1 mark. Okay? 1 mark. It doesn't matter if the whole question is worth 4 or 5 or 6. It'll just get 1. Okay? So that's all you see, that's all it gets. The rest of the marks are assigned to the working I'm about to show you. Okay? So let's have a go. This is the substitution they provide. So you differentiate. Okay. Now what you do at this point, there's a few different ways to do it, but I would probably write that as, given what I have here, d equals 1 on x dx, because I can see 1 on x dx in there, so it's going to make a nice easy substitution. Okay. I've changed one of these parts of the integral. I've already got a substitution for this because I defined it. What's the last piece that I need to account for in the substitution? I've got to change the limits, right? Beginner's error to change everything else but forget to change the limits. So you can draw yourself up a nice little box like so. This is the way it's often set out in specimen solutions for your original boundaries and then the boundaries in your new domain, your new variable. Okay. So I think it's going to work out to this. Is that okay? Yep. Alright, so now, what do? I've done all of my pre-work, now I can actually do my substitution. Now here's a critical point you want to look out for. Pay careful attention to the working that your paper has put down. You've really got to do this in one hit. In fact, I might do it up here because I've already written this down. Okay? You've got to be all x's and then all u's. have a look and see if the person you're marking has kind of done half and then done the other half. Okay, it's a big no-no. What you should have is this fully formed. Let's see. That's going to be du 1 over u squared du. Can you see it? Right? So number 1, I've changed the integrand. Number 2, the variable of integration. Number 3, the boundaries. All of them in a clean sweep. Okay? Can anyone tell me why is it a bad idea to sort of do it in 2 stages or 3 stages or any number? Why is it a bad idea? Now, probably the main thing, the main cause for concern is really the boundaries, okay? Because people will just plain forget to change the boundaries. But people get mixed up in here as well, okay? So if you've got some x's and u's flying around, that's really a bad thing. When it gets to the HSC, if the final answer ended up being correct, then there's a good chance that it would, okay? Is it a good practice to model yourself on? Probably not, okay? So there we go. I've now translated it all into u's. So what is the primitive? It should be -1 on u, shouldn't it? The power is -2, you raise it to -1, then you divide by that new power, which gives you the negative. From 1 to 2, and I think that means you'll get -1/2 minus -1. Yeah? Which gives you a half. Okay? What happens if there's units over here? Has anyone put any units on?
Yeah.
Anyone? Yeah, what happens? If there's units there, that would be wrong because it's an integral. It doesn't have units. It's not to do with an area. Okay? So just watch out for that. Maybe not deduct marks, but make a note of it. Okay? Now, just a quick thought for you. You have 3 marks to play with. Where would you put the 3 marks? Well, we already know if it's a bald answer, one of the marks will go here. Okay? So then when you look at these steps, where would the other 2 marks go? So, okay, now, people said substitution. I'm doing substitution in a lot of places. Which place? You mean here?
No, but they give you that though.
This is given. I don't think that's worth anything. How about here? You think that's worth a whole mark?
No.
The HSC doesn't reckon it's worth a whole mark, okay? I'll tell you why. It's because it's a very, very simple derivative. Like, it's almost no work. It's not really what's being tested by this question, okay? Where are the marks? There's 1 to get your boundaries, okay? The other mark is to do this whole piece, okay? They don't let you say, oh, I've got a bit here and I've got a bit there. They want to see that you can do the whole lot, okay? So 1 mark will be for translating the boundaries. 1 mark is for getting the integrand and the variable of integration all nice sitting together. And this is one of the reasons why I said it's so important to do it all in one step, okay? If they got to here and other stuff is wrong, that's not worth it.